Welcome to Tinker Tailor Gamer Scribe. Now, when we left off, the pachinko machine pretty much looked like this. I hadn't really done anything directly with it yet. I found a few pallets so that I could build a frame for it so that I had the space I needed and whatnot to start designing and building the ball return. So, getting the pallets apart were a pain in the butt. I mean, look at these nails. They're nasty little beasties. And needless to say, I damaged a fair share of the wood, because they don't use the greatest quality wood on pallets anyway. So, I made quite a mess. But either way, I ended up with a few functional planks of wood. And then I got started on the frame assembly itself. So I started with some old 2x4 that I had, not from the pallets, because I wanted to make sure that what the pachinko machine actually sat on was going to be nice and, stronger than the pallet would. So I cut a few pieces of 2x4. You can see me here lining up my cut, and I'm using a jigsaw. No, it is not the best tool for the job, but it's what I have. I don't know what happened to my skill saw. I must have lost it in the move, and so I don't have it anymore. But the jigsaw worked great. You just, as long as you're steady, you can get nice clean cuts, and then if you don't, you can always sand down, or there are methods to straighten out lines that you don't get quite right. So you can see I've cut off one and now two short pieces. Those are 6 inches long. Those are going to be attached directly to the bottom of the pachinko machine with space in the middle, and then that will be my gap to run the balls that come down from the front towards the back, where it can be collected by the elevator and taken up to the top. I figured it was the easiest way to go about it. I didn't want to do anything too complicated. I didn't want to do anything that would be getting in the way of an actual cabinet when I got to the let's make it pretty part to wrap it up. So, like I said, I keep it nice and low profile. You can see the gap that I've got there. I dipped off the camera there for a second, and I'm about to do it again. The reason why is because I was gathering the screws, and I realized that I do have screws for going through the 2x4s into the other 2x4s, but not from the 2x4s into the pachinko machine itself, which is a thinner piece of wood. These are the screws that I have in my current inventory. The longest ones are really nice. They'll go through and secure inside of both 2x4s, but the other two are too short. Well, one's the wrong type. That silver one is just not even what I want to be using. And then the black screws, my sheetrock screws, are too short. So I had to run to the hardware store and pick up the 4th one you can see here, which is a 2-inch piece, which is going to be really, really nice to go through one 2x4 into the pachinko machine's frame wood without piercing out the other side, because the problem with the ones that were too long is they are going to go right through that wood, and a significant amount of screws will go into the machine itself, potentially damaging electronics. So thus the short ones. Then I can get back to construction. In order to make sure that everything goes the way that I want it to, I have to first attach the spacers to the pachinko machine, and that means that I have to take the old legs off. They went way, way, way overboard on the screws, so that's why you see me just going and going and going with them. I think there were 6. Sorry, I'm doing the voiceover after the fact. I believe there were 6 or 7 in each leg, so it was pretty crazy. So yeah, I have to attach the spacers first to the pachinko machine, then I can put the longer 2x4 onto the spacers. I stuck with 4. You can see that I'm way down on the piece instead of up closer to the corner. That's on purpose. I wanted to make sure that the outer corners were clear for the screws that would be going through the second 2x4. So I did those 4 on the inside. I will be, yeah, you can see I'm flipping the machine over to do the same thing. You can see the bit of the lip on the 2x4. The 2x4 itself is wider than the actual pachinko frame, and that's not a bad thing. It will actually work out really well, more than I even expected, in terms of letting the pachinko machine stand balanced with the lip back like that. The other reason it's behind it and like not in front of it or anything is, like I said, I'm thinking in terms of the cabinet, for when the ball return is done and to make it look nice. I figure a nice flush front, is the way to go. So yeah, just putting the last few of the screws for the inside there. Those, by the way, were those 2-inch screws that I had to pick up at the hardware store. So then those long screws that I already had will be the ones that I use for this, and then I just do the same as I did with the spacers. There's 4 screws for either one. You don't have to go too crazy. The math differs depending on the application, but if you're using the right size of screw, depending on the application, the amount of weight that a single screw can support can be significant. And, since I'm using a fairly dense wood with, being the 2x4 a nice thickness and stuff, like it's gotta be close to, I don't know, at least 80 or 90 pounds, per set of screws. So it's way more than this thing will need to hold it together. So, but at the same time, it's nice and evenly spaced and everything worked out really well. So, you are about to see me do a dumb after I make sure that all of the things are flushed. I'm standing up the pachinko machine, but I forgot to take off my support arm. So I was like, what is going on there? But then see, once I got everything actually going, it stands really well on its own. I'm checking to see whether or not it's level on all of its directions, and it was pretty close. Not absolutely perfect, but much better than those previous legs were. And the weight is more evenly supported across it instead of just being on those 2 little feet things. So right now I am actually working on the fascia. The palette wood looked horrible. So I decided to sand down a little bit. Now you notice I don't have the wood secured, like I'm not planing it or anything crazy. I'm just kind of softening it up because, like I said, palette wood is not the best quality. So it's usually rough cut. It's a kind of a cheap wood. Like they're not too concerned about warps or things like that. So all I'm basically doing is giving it a nice clean face that isn't going to give anybody splinters, myself included, while I'm putting the thing together. And even in the time lapse, you can see I'm spending a lot of time on it. That mostly has to do with the fact that I was trying to get rid of color, because palettes end up being like scraped across floors and stuff like that. So it was they were marked up pretty bad. And you can see here with the face on, there's some of the grooves. Yeah, okay, that being a perfect example, the side I hadn't gotten to yet. Or actually, I don't do that wide side because that's going to be going inside. Nobody's going to see it, so I figured I wouldn't waste my time. But both of the edges might be visible because I'm not entirely sure how the cabinet's going to come together. So the parts that I was worried that people might see, I took care of. Here in a bit, I'll show you a picture of the difference between how the wood ended up. So this is the flat plane on a couple of pieces, sanded versus unsanded. It's very, very rough. Actually, the only piece I had left to show you of unsanded wasn't one of the more marked up pieces, but you can see even in the stuff that I sanded that it's, there's just dark marks in there that I'm not going to be able to get out with a hand sander. So, and that includes on the flat edge too. It's just, pallets are meant to take a beating, and you're not going to find free unused pallets. So anyway, I kind of like the look of it, and I decided I was just going to go with it, so I did. As I'd mentioned before, I'm just building the frame for it now. Like I said, it was mostly about making sure that I had that little slot in the bottom so that I could connect the front end to the back sides for the ball return, so anything that came down the front could make its way to the back, and then everything could be collected and then headed up the chute. So, part of making sure that everything fit wasn't just cutting it to length. Like you'll see here, I will end up cutting both sides of the wood, and the reason why is because on the ends, that's where all the most banging and stuff has happened to the wood, and then the nail holes were particularly bad. So you can see here I'm, sizing everything up to take marks. And when I'm marking this side here, I realize, I don't know how well it showed up, but I did this, which is I didn't draw my line straight and then cut it, and I was off. So what you see in this picture is the correction that I had to make. And I did that basically with the sander and a rougher grit to level that back out, which is what I needed to do. And with that out of the way, I was able to actually cut them to size. So I'm marking the actual size, and I wanted to go, I don't know if I made that clear in the video, that it's up flush with the top as well. I don't think anything for the ball return is going to go up above the top of the frame of the pachinko machine. But I want to leave it open just in case anything happens in terms of, needing to manually add balls to the hopper by hand, that kind of a thing. I may design in, maybe like a removable lid when I get to the actual make it pretty part, but for now, my primary concern is just making sure that everything is open. But I'm, basically putting in the bones of what the pretty part of this cabinet will get to hang on, because I didn't want to go crazy. The previous owner of the pachinko machine, obviously, like I said, 6 and 7 screws for each leg and things like that. He was not afraid of going crazy, and I don't know who it was, but their solution for, ball management and things like that just involved the use of screws all over the place. So, I cleaned off my area after doing all of the cutting, and now I'm going to attach those frame pieces, making sure that everything lined up nice. It was kind of a pain in the butt, and you'll see here exactly what I end up having to do, because my little claw, or my little grabbers, I couldn't make them work in there, regardless of how much I tried, because the piece of wood was too wide. I couldn't get it to secure to anything. So I laid it down on its side because I couldn't do it standing up. And then I put in the first screw, and, well, I messed up. And how I messed up was this. I think I've mentioned now a couple of times that pallet wood is not the best quality of wood. And so I didn't do a pilot hole, just not thinking about it, nice short screw, not a over aggressive screw. It still cracked it. So I had to rethink and go in again. So basically what I did was was I got one of the smallest little drill bits that I have to do pilot holes with. The problem is that I only have one drill. So I had to put in the first screws by hand just to save myself a little bit of hassle in terms of going back and forth between the drill and the screw bit. So yeah, I got to do the first 2 screws on either side, which you can see by hand. And I did one on the top and one on the bottom just to make sure that the wood wasn't going to move around any. And then after that, it made it really easy to just, taper out screws every once in a while. Again, I didn't go crazy. 2 at the bottom in the 2x4s, and then just a line down the middle from there on. So I think it's a total of 7 screws for the entire side instead of 7 screws just in that bottom piece. And so what I'm doing here, which I'm sorry I was in the camera for, was using my square to make sure that they were all roughly the same distance away, because I didn't have my straight line shot like I did for the end. So I just made sure that the depth lined up with them all. And then here's me swapping over to the screw bit so that I could put in those screws. After doing the pilot holes, no issues, either with my hand or with the drill. I don't know why I didn't think of that in the first place, but hey, these things happen. So basically, that's the first side done, and it's a repeat for the other side. Now without the cracked wood, because I'm doing my pilot holes. Excuse me. So I switch back to the drill, and then yeah, it's kind of interesting. I've considered getting a second drill, but then I would have this second drill that would only really be useful in these situations, because 9.9 out of 10 things that I do, I don't need multiple drills. So I've just never picked up a second one. And I don't know. I don't think I will, to be honest. This has been, like I said, this has been one of the very, very few cases where it would have been nice, but nice is not necessary. So yeah, I think I'll just stick with my trusty old corded drill. So yeah, you can see I'm just, like I said, just doing the repeat. That's me tilting it forward. I wanted to make sure that at least the same number of screws were on either side. Because honestly, I had music going while I was doing this, and instead of keeping track of things, I was just singing along to the music in my head. But yeah, this side went a lot smoother in general. So yeah, I don't know what to say here. It's basically more of the same. You will see here in a bit that the pieces of wood that I'm using for the side are much longer than the frame. I figured that would be the anchor point for the bulk of the cabinet in the back, which I'm leaving open because I don't know how much space back there the ball return is going to require. I have an idea for how much profile it's going to have in the back, and if it works, it won't protrude out any further than the rest. So anyway, this is how it ended up. Honestly, I mean, for old beat up, weathered, stained wood, it doesn't look that bad. The most important part, though, is how it looks here in the back, which is I've got that wide gap. Like I said, that'll be the anchor point for the depth of the cabinet. And then I've got my gap for the ramp to let the balls from the front into the back so that they can be collected. And that's as far as I got this week. So, yeah, we'll see what's next on the agenda.